Welcome to the Stage Time Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Valle. Here we talk to comedians about hallmark moments in their comedy careers. Today I'm joined by Tyler Rich. Tyler, want to say hi?
What's up, everybody?
So, Tyler is a comedian who's based out of Crozet right now, or is it Crozet? How do you say it?
Crozet.
Okay, Crozet. And you've been doing comedy for not terribly long, but it's been a couple years now, right?
It's been a year, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how's that been going? How do you feel overall about your comedy experience so far?
Good. I mean, it's technically been a year with an asterisk,
Was
because
that?
so about 9 years ago, I did stand up in Charlottesville for about 6 months and had a pretty successful go of it, but life just got in the way and I let it fall.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did. When I first started, I started in the DC area, and it pretty much got put on pause when I moved here to Harrisonburg to go to JMU. There weren't a lot of opportunities in the area, and I didn't have time to focus on it, even if there were, but I managed to get back into it eventually. So, uh, but we're going to talk to you today about the first time that you performed stand-up comedy, and I'm sure we'll get in a little bit more about your experience since. What have you been doing since you've been more active in it? Got any big notable things you want to brag about?
Well, I was on a Don't Tell show here in Charlottesville. That was pretty rad. Kind of a big name in comedy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I have a local monthly comedy residency at the Crozet location of Starr Hill Brewery every month.
Nice.
So pretty stoked on that. And then just shows here and there around the area and open mics. Um,
Yeah, you've become a pretty regular fixture of a lot of these things, especially in Charlottesville. And
mhm.
your girlfriend also does stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
so you're quite a
So
duo now.
yeah,
Yes.
she's
Yeah, go on.
she's the reason I got back into it. I anticipated this question, so I did a little bit of digging because I couldn't even remember when I started back up, and
Mm-hmm.
it was August of last year.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So.
So, what got you interested in stand-up comedy in the first place?
Well, like any sort of elder millennial, I can remember when Comedy Central actually showed comedy,
Mm-hmm.
and the blue collar comedy tour was huge. I
I remember
mean,
that.
yeah, you couldn't escape it. It was like everywhere you went, and I remember watching those guys and thinking it was cool. And then um, probably when I was in high school, uh, Last Comic Standing on NBC was
Oh yeah.
huge, and that guy Josh Blue out of Colorado, who also has cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
He went. I can't recall if he won it or he just got really far in the competition.
I think he got really far. I think it was probably like top five or something like that.
Yeah, and I thought that was cool seeing a comic with a disability really excel, and same with Brad Williams, the little person. That
Oh
he
yeah, yeah.
actually won it. Um, he
Oh
straight up won it, and he was on like Mind of Mencia and toured around with Carlos Mencia back in the day. I remember that.
yeah. I imagine for those guys in particular, and they've made comments about this, like him and who's the guy who plays Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones?
Oh, Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage. Yeah, they've all talked about how it's difficult getting jobs because pretty much all you get is a character they want to make fun of in some way. So
Yup.
yeah, but being able to see people who are able to kind of do their stuff outside of that is pretty exciting. Um,
Yeah.
So, Last Comic Standing and what's it called? Comedy Central Presents, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, with Josh Blue, for those of you who may not know about Tyler Rich, he does have cerebral palsy. Do you and him have a different variety of it, I guess. I don't know how exactly it works. You want to kind of educate us on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So CP is just kind of a garbage can term characterizing damage to the cerebellum,
Uh-huh.
uh, and it can present itself in a multitude of different ways. And in Josh Blue's case, he has what's called hemiplegia. So obviously, this is an audio podcast, so the best way I can describe it is Two-Face from Batman, but one side of your body is all kind of jacked up and has a mind of its own.
Mm-hmm.
And it can affect your speech and whatever. That's pretty common in CP cases. I have what they call spastic diplegia, so it's just my lower legs, and I use trekking poles like hiking staffs for shorter distances, and then anything that would involve a lot of standing or long distances, I use a wheelchair.
Now, I actually found a question that I was going to ask for our crowd work segment, but we're kind of dancing around it right now, which is I was scrolling through Reddit and someone posted a question about open mics and their accessibility because it was when you go into the paragraph, it was a comic who relied on it. I think he said he had MS and he relied on a scooter to get around. So has that been something that you've had issues with?
Not really. I'm a pretty athletic dude, and in a past life, I did all kinds of adaptive sports and even like Spartan racing.
I was about to say you're wearing a Spartan race shirt right now, so
Yeah,
trying to flex on me. I don't know if I could even do that.
So I was doing Spartan racing at a pretty competitive level, so I just figure my way around venues. I think it was like for a 3-month span, every show I was booked on the Waynesboro side of Afton Mountain had stairs.
Yeah, and the show you did with me at the Friendly Fermenter's a basement venue, and there's only stairs to get in. So I almost didn't ask just for that reason, but I'm glad I did because that was a great show.
Yeah.
I didn't want to inconvenience you, but you worked it out, so that's good.
Yeah.
So were there any, I mean, you kind of answered this a bit, were any comics that you found influential? And you mentioned Josh Blue, but any because of their style?
Ron White.
Oh, yeah, I know Ron White from Blue Collar Boys, yeah.
Yeah.
What about him appealed to you?
So I liked him because unlike like a Jeff Foxworthy or a Bill Engvall that were almost so redneck it was sticky and annoying. He kind of played to just middle America, kind of blue collar, but a little bit more upscale than Walmart. And the way he told stories, I liked his comedic style because it was less bits and more sort of an ongoing story, and then weaving that into his whole set. I really like that.
Yeah, he also had a bit more of an edge to him, I'd say, probably than the other guys. He'd smoke a cigarette while he's up on stage and tell his story like he's a guy who's seen some stuff, and he's just like, let me tell you about what happened to me when I was, getting drunk in a bar. So, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
What made you want to actually go and try stand-up for the first time?
I honestly, at the time, it was about 2014, 2015, if we're going back to the first instance.
Yeah.
And I was just bored, I was out of college. I didn't really have anything going on, outside of like work and just general boring life. And I wanted a challenge or something. And I'd heard for years sitting in bars and whatever, but it's like, man, you're really funny. You should like go up on stage, whatever. And then lo and behold, I did a Google search for comedy around Charlottesville, and Chris Allen's name popped up in the Southern mic, which, to give you an idea of how long ago this was, and this is more for you specifically than the audience, this was pre-Dreads, Chris.
Oh.
He was still in the Air Force at that time.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Say, if you get a chance, look up Chris Allen. He hosts. We've mentioned him a couple times on the show, but yeah, he hosts open mic in Charlottesville, and he's open for some pretty big names like Michael Che and I think Mark Norman.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's a pretty cool guy. So you did the Southern then?
Yep.
Yeah, that's been the case for a couple people I've talked to, mostly around this area. That's kind of the big hot spot. So, can you like paint us a picture of what it was like the first time you did it?
Sure.
Like, what was the audience like? Did you invite anybody out? How did your set go? Things like that.
So the audience was actually pretty full up. The layout was completely different as to how you probably know it, and I know it today. There weren't like seats; it was just tables. And I had a couple friends from the Harrisonburg area that heard I was doing it, and because I went to school up there, and so they came down to support me. And then a girl I knew from around town brought a bunch of her work friends, and one of her work friends was at the bar, and we were flirting pretty hard, and she was feeding me shots of Jameson. So
she knows the way to your heart, or knew the way to your heart, I should say.
Yeah, so I went up about 5 shots deep. And at the time, I was using a Segway instead of the wheelchair that I currently use. I had an adapted Segway with seats on it. Yeah, made for a fun comedic trope. But a lot of my shtick, a lot of my shtick is kind of being from Florida and being ridiculous and this, that, and the other. So it played in really well. And actually, my set, for a first set, I've seen a lot worse.
You've seen worse?
Yeah.
So how did you like prepare your bits for that?
I just thought of like stories from my life and ridiculous things that had happened in my life, and I just kind of sat at a computer, and I still write this way to this day. I'll just sit down and like write something out, and then maybe sleep on it, and then the next day I kind of pare it down. It's kind of like, carving a sculpture or something. I start with a slab of marble, and then just hone it down into something decent.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good method to do it, because I've done in my writing process where I've written something down, and I'm like, am I going to actually think this is funny tomorrow? I'll perform a set where I'm trying new stuff out, and I'll be like, I think that's funny, and then I'll like give it a day or a week or something, and I'll come back to it, and it's like, it's not that funny, or you might be surprised it'll hold up, but it is a bit of a process. So you've been doing that since the beginning, and you've kind of stuck with that method?
Yeah, that's been kind of my method all the way going through time, and it's easier now, like with iPhones being what they are. It's super easy to just have a notepad on my phone. When I write, and this is just me particularly with the CP, and like I don't have too much impairment in my hands, but I just like writing on a keyboard.
Yeah.
So it's easy with the notes going between the phone and the laptop. If something funny happens while I'm out, I can just write something real quick on the phone.
Gotcha.
When I get home, actually expound upon it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you, when you performed there, Southern's a pretty cool crowd. Were the other comedians like pretty welcoming, or were they all distracted with their own things, or how was that?
They were all pretty welcoming. I mean, at the time, it was some pretty heavy hitters in the community. At the time, they were just open micers, and they've since gone on. Like Winston Hodges was there. I
Mhm.
think Al Chastain was there. Um, I remember, I remember the lineup pretty vividly because my opening line, and I've since recycled it since I
Mhm.
got back into doing stand up. But there was a LGBTQ comedian, like a lesbian. There
Mhm.
was a uh, I think it was Chris, um, and me. Like that was how the lineup went, and I'm like, wow, we got a lesbian, a black guy, and a cripple. One more minority on the punch card, and we get a free toaster.
I know. I was about to say it's a diversity bingo.
Yeah.
Did you So I'll tell you a quick funny story actually. So when I first met Winston Hodges in person, I didn't know it was him. I think I'd heard his name before, but he just happened to be at the Southern one night, and I'd had a few, so I was like pretty relaxed for my setup stage, and then I was talking to him at the bar or something like that. I was like, hey, I was like, have you been here before? And he was like, yeah, I've been here before, and like he wasn't being like a jerk about it or nothing. He was just like he
Yeah.
didn't know me, I didn't know him, so he was like, yeah, I've done this a couple times and stuff like that, and I was like, all right, man, well, good luck with your set. And then
Yeah.
I see him up there, and he like kills the whole thing, and then someone mentioned that he used to host it or that he does all this stuff in DC now, and I'm just like, I feel like an idiot just like telling this dude who's basically a professional, like, yeah, good luck, man.
Well,
Like, get
I
out there, you know.
I caught Brad Williams off guard because I saw him in Roanoke,
Uh huh.
and his wife is Chinese,
Mhm.
and I don't want to burn one of his jokes, but it's on Instagram, so whatever. And it's in his special. He talks about how his Great Wall of China is a curb, and he had a meet and greet after the show, and I roll up in the chair, and of course, like his road manager pulls everybody in line that is like wrapped around the building,
Yeah.
everybody with a disability, front of the line,
Nice.
and
Just like at the amusement
so
park.
yeah, it's Disney World, man. And so we go up there, and we got a few seconds. So I was like, "Hey, man, I said, I also am a comic. My Great Wall of China is also a curb for entirely different reasons, and I will open for you one day." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, whatever." No, think about it, dude. We don't even have to adjust the mic stand. And there was this pause, and then he was like, "Oh, that's good."
You got his attention. That's good.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, you could have been like, if was Jen with you, your girlfriend?
she was. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's like, hey, look, twinsies, right?
Well, I I give her a hard time because Josh Blue's unfortunately now ex-wife, but she was Japanese.
Hmm.
Brad's wife is Chinese, and of course Jen is also Chinese. I'm like, is this a thing that I'm not aware of? Like,
I remember in the show Space Force. Have you seen that?
yeah,
They talked about. I think they said the most, statistically speaking, the most stable couples were, I think, Asian men and African American women or something like that. Like there was a acronym for it. I can't remember what it was, but maybe the second most stable is people with
yeah,
disabilities and Asian women.
yeah. I don't know, man,
Yeah.
but
I also love how you two do jokes about each other. Like you
yeah,
go out there and all you do is basically riff on each other's characteristics and stuff.
yeah.
That's got to be a fun
We
relationship.
It is. It's super fun, man. We make each other laugh every day, which is really really fun.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's not like you get tired of each other's jokes or anything.
No, I mean she's caught me off guard sometimes. Um, if we're doing jokes about each other,
Hmm.
we try to like run bits by each other if it's kind of on the line of being acceptable. We don't
I
want
get you.
to piss the other one off, but she'll every now and again she'll hit me with something that just absolutely kills me, and I'm dying laughing. I had no idea.
Are there things that you two have like vetoed for each other, where you want to do a joke about like the other, and you're like, no, do not say that?
Every now and again, I mean, it's not so much that we veto individual jokes. It's just like, all right, stop beating this premise to death. You have like 7 jokes about my dog, for example. Like,
Yeah.
she is super into her dog, or like, 7 jokes about me being a redneck. You kind of gotta space it out.
I get you. That was always my concern with certain comedians. I think I see it most with overweight comedians and sometimes black comedians, where it's like all they do is just jokes about, hey, look how fat I am, or hey, this is how black I am, or something like that. And it's like, okay, it's just getting a little like one note, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like that is the danger with certain people. I have like a handful of Latino jokes, but I'm like, I don't want that to be my whole thing. It's just like, because I think that's the trap that Carlos Mencia also kind of fell into. Is that a lot of his were just Mexican jokes, and then there was a whole thing about joke stealing or whatever that came out.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for that.
Yeah, it was like, so that also did it, because I remember I was probably early high school when his show was out. And I was like, this is awesome because I'm immature. This is my kind of humor. And then after a while, I'm like, like I wouldn't go back and watch it. Yeah. But I'll still go back and watch Dave Chappelle because while he does race jokes, that's not his like crutch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the way I try to approach the disability thing too. Like, yeah, it's kind of obvious, but I don't want my entire set to be that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you have to like address it as the elephant in the room, but you can move on once you kind of get that out of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, it obviously informs my set to some degree. Virtually all of my jokes have some sort of nuance in that direction. Mm-hmm. But that's part of my MO when I go on stage is if I can change the perception of the way that people with disabilities are viewed by the audience, like, then that's an ancillary benefit. Like, when I roll up there, and if I'm talking about like getting laid or blackout drunk in college, that's not something.
That was. Yeah, that was a story that I was actually thinking of. Is you do a joke about getting arrested. I don't want to burn it, but you do a joke about getting arrested in college, and you throw in a little bit about your CP, but that's not like what drives the joke. I feel like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you do a good job with that. Do you remember any of the jokes that you did the first time, and do you still do them?
So I do the diversity punch card every now and again. I'll trot that out. That's like lineup dependent.
Yeah.
That's definitely lineup dependent. A lot of them at the time were based off of the Segway, which I don't use anymore. So I could probably rework them for the wheelchair. Like I had one, and I don't even really remember how I set it up. That set is on YouTube somewhere, by the way, if people want to watch me bomb.
Oh yeah.
My buddy filmed it without my knowledge and then posted it on YouTube. I'm like, all right, here we go.
So it's on his channel?
Yeah.
Oh.
But if
copyright.
Yeah, right. If you search Tyler Rich on YouTube, and once you get past all the country singer, I'm buried down in somewhere. But no, I had a joke because I smoked cigars and I smoked a pipe in college. I was that guy, and I had a joke about how people were, flummoxed by the Segway, and they can't believe it's actually a Segway, and they ask me stupid questions like, "Are you on a Segway?" It's like, as I'm smoking a pipe. No, I'm a small train. See the smokestack? Dumb things like that. And I had a story that wasn't even really a bit about how I was approached by Pentecostals, and they said I was a victim of a generational infirmity curse.
What?
Yeah.
As in, like, your condition is a result of that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
I was
What did you say to them?
I hid behind a Prius. I pop smoked and left my whole family because it was like it was me. So I'm all gimptastic. My grandmother, who was on a walker, but spitting image of Queen Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
My late aunt, who had horrible rheumatoid arthritis, so she was also on a walker. Looks like Quasimodo in drag, poor thing. And then my dad, who looks like the unholy love child of Ron Jeremy and Pablo Escobar. And they come up to us and they're like, "Hey, can we pray for you?" It's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And the lady breaks out into speaking in tongues.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, the guy gets like chameleon eyes. Like one goes one way, one goes the other way. It's like, "Do not be alarmed. She is merely speaking in tongues." And I'm like, Prius. And I hauled ass, went and hid behind a car. I'm like, I was in Florida. I am a 6th-generation native Floridian. I'm like, this is too Florida for me. I'm out.
That is a weird experience.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more messed up if you're just like, God didn't make this way. This is just how we are. Or like your grandma was like, she's not cursed by God. She's just old. She needs a walker. Yeah. It happens, you know?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty, like, the Pentecostals and the laying of hands and all that crap, that happens to me pretty regularly. And one time I'd come back from a Spartan, you know, I was competing, so it was pretty cutthroat, and I was literally bleeding and, like, covered in mud. I was still drinking at the time, and I went to the gas station to get a six-pack and go home, and these guys, like, did the laying of hands, and they're like, "We're going to heal you," and I'm like, this crap. And so I looked at them, I'm like, "Guys, I'm like a human motorcycle. You can pray for me all you want, but if I stand still right now, I'm going to fall over. I got to keep moving to stay upright." And they moved like a football huddle. And then they follow me back to my truck after I leave the gas station. And they're like, "We just want you to be healthy and whatever." And I looked at them and I called them out, right? I said, "All right, as men of faith, would you say that men are created in God's image?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "Then how do you explain me, a foul-mouthed alcoholic cripple?" And they were like, "Oh." And they left.
Yeah, that'll get them.
Yep.
Yeah. Or it would have been crazy if you just started walking normally.
Yeah.
Like, what if that was like, holy, this is all I needed?
Yeah. I wish I could do, like, I wish...
You just fake it long enough to make them think it happened.
Like VTech or something, I can just hit a button and stand up straight for, like, 30-second intervals. That would be so handy.
You would have blown their minds.
Oh, that would have been fun.
That would have just fed them, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like... So they just, like, didn't even ask. They just started laying hands on you and just being, like, praying.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's like when you hear, like, black women who have the afros when people just come up and touch their hair. Mm-hmm. Or a pregnant lady when people just start rubbing their belly. It's like, can you not right now? Jeez.
That's why I got tattooed, man. People... I look scarier. People leave me alone.
So what made you ultimately stick with stand-up comedy?
I mean, I have a very stressful day job. I'm in the corporate world, and it demands a lot out of me. So this is a creative release, and I'm pretty social dude, so it gets me out of the house. I get to see people, and it's something that Jen and I get to do together, which is really fun. But I like the community around here. Um, that was partly why I got out of it back in the day because it was a lot cliquier than it is now.
Gotcha.
And I just liked the community in the Shenandoah Valley and Charlottesville. It's cool.
Yeah, the people have been pretty cool here. That was a big difference too from when I started off in the DC area than when I moved down here. Because when I was in DC, everybody just seemed like a bit of a jerk. Just
Yeah.
very unwelcoming and didn't care to get to know new people. So I get that.
Yeah.
Um, what was your biggest takeaway from your first set?
Uh, don't go up on stage after 5 shots of Jameson.
So yeah, I haven't done it as much lately, but I used to try to give myself a little buzz just so I'd be more relaxed on stage and less robotic. But
Yeah.
sometimes I'd overdo it, so I try not to do that anymore. I'll have like a drink or something, like one
Yeah.
drink before I get up just to loosen up. But there is a danger of that too.
Yeah, I don't drink anymore, but I still smoke. Not typically while I'm out and about,
Hmm.
but I like to do it while I write, and I come up with these like brilliant, like not even jokes, just like full sets in my head, and I'm like, this is great. I totally want to do this on stage, and then I look at what I wrote the next day, and I'm like, this is utter garbage. Like no, but one day I might try it.
I got you. So having gotten the experience that you have now, doing shows and stuff, has your approach to open mics changed since you first started? And if so, how?
Uh, I think initially I thought open mics were the be all and end all of comedy,
Hmm.
and so I would just do anything and everything, and I I've since sort of gotten a sense of all right, no, there are levels, there's your feature shows, then you might open for somebody or whatever. So I use open mics predominantly as just like a whetstone, right? You can sharpen your material and really hone it in,
Hmm.
um, and use it as a proving ground. And then by the time you go up on like a showcase or a feature set, um, it's really dialed in.
Yeah, I think that is the mistake that early comedians make is they treat open mics, like you said, kind of the end all be all, and
Hmm.
don't see it for the valuable practice time it is when you actually start getting booked on shows.
Hmm.
So it becomes more like a training ground for when you get booked on shows. Whereas for people who first starting out, I think that is kind of a hurdle. They need to see if they're actually going to stick with it, and then they can kind of see it for what it should be, which is
Oh, for
opportunity
sure.
for stage time. Yeah,
Yep.
and have fun, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who wants to try stand-up comedy?
Just do it, man. Like you're if you're at the door of the plane, you're not gonna get the ground until you take the step. You know what I mean? Like,
That's how you ended up in the wheelchair.
yeah, yeah. That chute packer is
Yeah.
fire. Uh,
You actually have been skydiving though, haven't you? You mentioned that
twice.
once. Twice.
Yep.
Wow.
Twice. Yeah.
How was that?
Oh, it was awesome. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
Uh, it's very expensive. There is no practical purpose for civilians. Um, and there is a certain degree of risk involved. So I haven't done it since. It's cool. A couple of my buddies that are like actually licensed and whatever want to get me into a wind tunnel to see if I can get certified to
Hmm.
skydive solo, but I can't do anything with it. So I'm just kind of like,
Seems like a waste of money.
yeah, waste of money
You've done it. You
and
can check it off your bucket list. Yeah, you can check it off your
yeah,
bucket list now.
yeah.
Did Jen do it with you?
No, no.
Oh.
This was pre-gen by a wide margin.
Okay. Do you think she
Yeah.
would if you asked?
Probably. I don't think she would. Um,
That'd be funny to see, though.
I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I have done a lot of crazy stuff in my day. And, like, I forget about it, and every now and again it'll, like, come up in conversation. Like, I've had a three-wheeled motorcycle at, like, 110 on public roads, and 110, 120, and Jen was like, so what? I'm like, oh, yeah, disregard that.
You're the guy with the crazy backstory.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I think we're going to move on to our crowd work segment, where I take listener questions. Unfortunately, we didn't get a ton of responses, but I do have some questions from the r/standup on Reddit. So the first question: how long does it take stand-up comedians to craft a really well-written joke?
I mean, I think it varies depending upon the comedian. For me, I would say it's very rare to get lightning in a bottle and just one joke hits perfectly the first time you do it. I mean, it can happen. I've seen it happen, but I would say you need at least two to three reps if you're doing multiple mics, a week. That might be a week. Or for me, I go to the Southern mic like, once a week, and then maybe 2-3 other shows a month. So probably, for me, probably about a month.
Yeah. For me, it depends, because I do a lot of kind of shorter one-liners, and those are usually either make it or not. Like, they're either funny or they're not. So those I can get through pretty quickly. Once I try it out for the first time, they're usually hit or miss. But when I do my longer stories, I have one that I've been working on for like almost a year now, because I'm like, I know it's funny, but I just can't get the wording down. I also keep forgetting to try it out. But, like, to me, it's not like a joke I might do at a paid gig yet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I use as a litmus test, is would I do this? Is this a joke I would get paid to do, basically? And that's how I kind of determine, is it, well crafted or not.
That's a good way to classify it.
Yeah. What do you do when you doubt your jokes?
When I doubt my jokes, send it. I mean, the joke stands for itself. It's either gonna sink or swim, and sometimes you gotta drown the weak ones. But you never know till you throw it in the pond.
Yeah, that's that Spartan in you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any way of, like, boosting your confidence when it comes to a joke? Is there something that gives you reassurance or feedback? You say you run a lot by Jen.
I run a lot by Jen. She has a different sense of humor than I do, and her comedic style is very different than mine. So by and large, I'm more interested in audience at large feedback. I try to play to the middle, because there are some jokes I've seen other comedians do that are very intelligent and very, very funny, but you have to be at that level. And then there are some that are just, like, so dumb that, like, you're just like, ugh.
Like hacky?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So I try to straddle that line kind of in the middle.
I gotcha. All right. I think that's all we've got to talk about, at least for now. Actually, you know what? What got you back into doing it again? You said Jen did, so how did that go?
So that was actually at a mic that unfortunately is no longer in existence, but that was at the Sake Brewery when they did the open mic there. And it was a feature show with an open mic segment, like, in the middle of it. and she, she vacillated back and forth as to whether she wanted me to go up, because she's like, "You're so funny, but like I want to keep it to myself," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And finally, I was like, "You know what? To hell with it. Just put me on the list." And I went up there, and I mean, I don't want to sound self-aggrandizing, but by everybody's reviews, I'm murdered. And so I was like, okay, I'm back. I mean,
Yeah.
Tyreek Mack, back in the day, I got off stage and he was like, "Yo, I don't know where that came from, but that was freaking hilarious. You can make millions of dollars doing this." And I was like, "Yeah, I doubt that, but I respect him a lot as a comedian. He's super funny." So like to get that kind of praise, I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this again.
Did you go on before or after her, Jen?
I went on after her.
Okay, so at least she
Yeah.
didn't like get angry at you. It was like, oh,
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the worst when well, it's good and bad when we're on a lineup one after the other, because that's
Mhm.
happened a couple times,
Yeah.
which makes for some fun fodder if we're bringing the other one up.
Yeah. It helps set the other up for some good openers.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you want to tell the people about where they can find you or find your work?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Tyler Rich Comedy. I do have an X. I don't really use it, so just ignore that. And then you can find me on TikTok. That's probably where I'm most active, posting clips at the Palsy Pounder.
It's not the Palsy Pounder 1, 2, or 3. It's you were able to get it
Nope.
on the first go.
Yep, I got the Palsy Pounder. Yep.
Nice. Uh, you got any upcoming shows? This will air Monday, so.
Monday. So pretty much every Monday at the Southern. Last Wednesday of every month, you can find me at Starr Hill Brewery in Crozet. I host bingo, beer, and brouhaha. It's a comedy bingo night. Basically, there's a 10 to 20-minute intermission in the middle where I tell a bunch of jokes. A lot of times I'll have guest comedians come in, and it benefits charity.
Nice.
Um, but those are my two big ones. Nothing that I know of. I do have a show coming up October 3rd. I don't have specifics, but watch my socials because
Mhm.
both Jen and myself will be on that lineup. Um, so yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me tonight. Appreciate you telling your story. Any
Yeah,
last
thanks
words?
for having me.
All right.
No, keep getting after it, everybody.